If you were blindfolded and then stuck in a dark, windowless room for weeks on end, you would still have a pretty decent idea as to what time of day it is. And that is because of your circadian rhythm, which is your literal biological clock. Circadian actually translates to about a day. So this isn't perfect. I'm not sitting there just saying like you're gonna be like, oh, it's 3:43 p.m. Like, you're not going to have that level of precision, but you're going to have a pretty decent idea because of some very specific things happening in your body. And in today's video, we're going to be using this brand new physiology study unit from Kenhub to figure this out. This is a premium feature that I'm going to show you, but there is plenty that you can get for free the moment you sign up. If we scroll down and look at this, you're going to see that we have these related articles here on like the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the pineal gland, all of our images. There's so many articles. All of that is going to be 100% free, but this is a premium feature. And what this is showing us is basically an in-depth lesson all about, let's get up here, sleep and wakefulness. So while, yes, the videos and the quizzes are premium, there's still so much value. So go ahead and check the link in the description below. And we're actually going to link a separate but equally awesome study unit on reflex arcs so you can actually see what they are like. But while you're there, you can also just check out everything else that Kenhub has to offer. Now, what we're going to do is basically just look at this whole process for the circadian rhythm. And the first thing we're going to be taking a look at is these two drives. It's called the homeostatic sleep drive and then the circadian wake drive. So the blue line is going to be your sleep drive. And basically what we're seeing here is you can see it says day, night, right? And you can see that we have times here. This is going to be very, very helpful. And then you can also see there's going to be two thresholds. We have a sleep threshold and then a waking threshold. So what's happening over the course of a day is your homeostatic sleep drive is increasing. This is quite literally your body compelling you to sleep. There's an urge to sleep that is building. Now, this is directly linked to adenosine. So adenosine is basically what is left over as your body uses ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. So as your body's naturally using the body's energy currency, adenosine is going to start to build up in the neurons of the brain. And that is going to pretty much just start to make you feel tired, is more or less what's going to happen. Now, interestingly, caffeine will block those receptors, meaning the adenosine can't bind to it, but it blocks the receptors. It actually doesn't activate them. So caffeine doesn't really give you energy as much as it doesn't let your body realize it's tired. And eventually that caffeine's going to go away and the adenosine crashes, and well, that's all she wrote. But what's happening here is this homeostatic sleep drive is increasing, and eventually you're going to get to this point where the adenosine buildup is just massive, and there's other factors at play here, and you're going to cross what's called the sleep threshold. And this is usually around like whenever you typically go to bed. So maybe it's, if you're like me and you're just a verifiable old man, it's around 9 p.m. But if it maybe for you it's 11 p.m. Maybe if your circadian rhythm has adjusted to other hours, like shift work can be chaotic on this. Jet lag, we're going to see why jet lag can mess with this like crazy, but some people can push this out quite significantly, and they can actually basically push it like 3 a.m., so on and so forth. But the point is here, adenosine builds up and then you cross this sleep threshold. But at the same time, we also have to understand you have this circadian wake drive. So the circadian wake drive is a combination of several things. So this is where it seems like cortisol is going to be at play here. Your body temperature, right? ATP consumption. So basically what's going to happen here is it's going to increase. And so you can see like in the middle of the day, your circadian wake drive is just rocking. You are good. You're not feeling tired. Yes, your sleep drive is kind of like growing, right? That homeostatic sleep drive. But the circadian wake drive is still doing pretty good. But then it's going to start to go down. This is when you're starting to feel sleepy. And then as soon as that sun sets, this is when it's really going to start taking off. And this is where you are then crossing the waking threshold. So the sleep threshold and the waking threshold are basically just where these two things are basically meeting, right? Where it's like your body temperature is going to start to decrease, your cortisol level is going to start to go down, which we're going to see, and it happens at about the same time. And this is where you sleep. And so as you drop into sleep, what's going to happen is your adenosine is going to start to be like cleaned up. We'll just put it that way inside of the neurons. And that is going to be very important because there's other things happening with sleep too, by the way. It's not just adenosine cleanup, but there's a whole bunch of like flushing that's happening inside of your brain. And it's just kind of progressing throughout the night. And at the same time, you can see that around, this is about like 1, 2, 3 a.m. or so on a typical night. You can see you're bottomed out, right? Your circadian wake drive is all the way down, but you're cleaning up. And then eventually, cortisol is going to start to rise, as we're going to see. Your body temperature is going to start to rise. And sure enough, you wake and then you repeat the same thing the next day. So this is one essential component of our circadian rhythm. But the question you might be wondering is, well, how does your body know that it's actually bright or night, right? Day or night or anything like that? So if we go to this next image, there's a lot to look at here, but I just want to just take our time with this so we fully understand exactly what's happening here, because we have this sagittal view of the brain. So you can see the folded part is going to be the cerebrum. Then this right here is the brainstem. And then this back here, this right here is called the cerebellum. Now in the center of the brain is another region called the diencephalon. And we can see that there is a portion that is highlighted, and we're going to come back to that in just a moment. But then you can see out here, we have an eyeball. So the eye, you can see we have it saying light and then less light. And so obviously the eyes are for seeing, but what a lot of people don't understand is the eyes are not just for vision, but also just detecting the presence of ambient light. And so you can see this is titled or labeled 1, and then it kind of comes here. You're seeing this cross section of the photoreceptive layer of the eye called the retina. And there's a whole bunch of cells in here that we're not going to go over. You can see it's pointing to this one purple one here. This is called a photosensitive retinal ganglion cell. This one does not process vision, right? This is not a rod. This is not a cone. Well, not really process anyways, but it's not detecting, right, photons in terms for vision. Instead, this is just there to detect the presence of ambient light. And so what it's then going to do is send a signal. And we can see this coming up, and it's going up here, and then it's going to go to this blue portion that I told you, right? So you can see all of it right here, but we've zoomed in on it in this box. And so this blue portion is what we call the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus is really important for like homeostasis, right? So basically, it's not really balance, but it's kind of like your body's regulation. It's like a thermostat. It's helping to control a whole wide variety of things. Inside of the hypothalamus are two structures that we want to concern ourselves with. There's this tiny one that you're not really going to be able to see all that well because it's very small, called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Sometimes you'll just see it be called the SCN. And then we also over here have the paraventricular nucleus. And what's going to happen is this. Your photosensitive retinal ganglion cell is going to detect whether there is a bunch of light or there isn't a bunch of light. And it's going to send a signal to the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Well, that is then going to send that and relay it to the paraventricular nucleus. Now, the goal here is actually going to be, you can't really see it all that well in this picture because it's tiny. There's this little green bean back here that we've kind of like highlighted. This is called the pineal gland. Now, the pineal gland is part of your endocrine system. And this is going to be secreting a hormone called melatonin that I guarantee you've heard of. Now, our goal is to get this signal to the pineal gland. And so when you're looking at this, you're like, oh, that makes sense. Okay, so we'll just go from that paraventricular nucleus and we'll just come over here. Well, no, you were wrong. That is not allowed. We got to take a pretty intense detour. And that is because the pineal gland is regulated through the sympathetic nervous system. And that means everything with the sympathetic nervous system has to go through the spinal cord. And so what's going to happen here is that we're going to send a signal from that paraventricular nucleus down, right? We're exiting, going through the midbrain, the pons, the medulla oblongata. All three of these really just belong to the brainstem. And we're going to go all the way down to the lateral horn of the spinal cord. And that's where we're going to meet the intermediolateral nucleus. This is part of the sympathetic nervous system. And then what it's going to do is go, no, we're not going here. We need to go back to the pineal gland, and whoop, it goes right all the way back up. and it's going to make its way to that pineal gland. So that's what you're seeing here in 3. So again, light comes into the eye, goes to the hypothalamus, goes all the way down to the spinal cord, and then goes all the way back up, and we land at the pineal gland. And so the pineal gland has, been said to be like the third eye. That's actually more of a modern interpretation of it. So from my understanding, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be really hyper knowledgeable around chakras, but the chakra third eye wasn't really correlated with the pineal gland until very recently, within like the past 100 to 200 years. But this is still considered the third eye by a lot of people. And the reason they think that is because you have one eye, 2 eyes, and then their goal here is to get it to this thing. And there's only one of them. Right? The pineal gland is it's not like lobed. You don't have like a right and a left lobe of the pineal gland. You're only going to have one pineal gland. So it's like the third eye. But what this thing does is it secretes a hormone called melatonin. And melatonin is a hormone that is going to act on the brain, and it basically just like desensitize it, or to an extent, right? It's going to lower brain activity to the point where you are going to be compelled to sleep. So in the presence of light, what's going to happen is this is just getting a signal. It's like, hey, there's a bunch of light outside. Don't go to sleep. But in the absence of light, that is where it's going to get the signal that it's time to go to sleep, and we're now going to produce melatonin. And this makes perfect sense if you think about it, because from an evolutionary perspective, our ancient ancestors were hunter-gatherers, right? It made sense to go to sleep at night. All the scary stuff that could eat you or hurt you was active at night. So we are not nocturnal. We sleep during the night. And so as the sun goes down, we start to feel the effects of melatonin really start to take over. But you're also pairing that with the buildup of adenosine that we talked about from in this image, right? From that homeostatic sleep drive. So as the adenosine is building up, we also are going to start to have melatonin be produced, and that combined effect is what's going to kick us into sleep, especially as our circadian wake drive is going to drop. So all of this is happening, but that's not it, because let's also look here, because this is going to show us just throughout the course of a day and night these two competing hormones. Because so basically we just talked about melatonin, but we also have to talk about cortisol. Now cortisol, everyone knows as the stress hormone. So this is going to be produced by the adrenal glands or your suprarenal gland. And cortisol is very important. It's not just about stress, as in like I'm stressed, I got a test coming up. Cortisol is very important to help just kind of activate you. So if we look at here, you can see 6 a.m., 12 p.m., 6 p.m., and then it kind of repeats. So, or 12 a.m., then 6 a.m., so on and so forth. So if you see here, let's assume you're waking up at 6 a.m., right? So if you wake up at 6 a.m., then what's going to happen is your cortisol is going to start to increase. Now you notice it is not peaking right at 6 a.m., right? It's not like you wake up just like, that'd be intense. Instead, it takes a little bit of time to get going, and then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I feel good. But then what's going to happen is throughout the course of the day, it's just going to be in this slow decline. Now there's other things that are going to help keep you awake, but cortisol is really there to just kind of help bring you, right? Cortisol is a hormone of alertness. And so it's going to drop and drop and drop, and then you're going to see that it's going to hit its very lowest point at around midnight or so, assuming you're on a normal sleep pattern, and then it's going to start to rise, and eventually it's going to get to a point where you're going to wake up, and then it's going to do the exact same thing. Well, at the same time, melatonin when you wake is going to decrease, and then that is just going to crater, right? You don't need to be awake, right? You don't want to be awake you don't want to be asleep. You do want to be awake. You don't want to be asleep at noon, and then what's going to happen is it's going to come all the way up, and then it's going to start to peak, and then you can see it's really peaking here. This is about like 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., around that time frame. And then all of a sudden, it's going to start just dropping. And so what we see is there's these crisscross patterns, right? So at around 6 p.m., this is where you're really going to start feeling just the lag of the day, right? Like the tearing down of the day, just everything kind of, wearing on your brain. But at the same time, over here, this is where you're like, your body's just starting to wake up, right? And so I don't know if any of you ever track your sleep. I'm a big fan of tracking my sleep. I've been doing it for probably like 15 years at this point. The methods for tracking it have gotten profoundly better. But it's really interesting if you look at this to see kind of just like the cycles you're going into between deep sleep and that. And that's a whole other level. That's a whole other thing where we're talking about different, brainwave states too. But at the same time here, you have to understand it's like right before you wake up, that's like you're jostling, you're moving around in your bed, and that's because cortisol is increasing and melatonin is decreasing, and eventually that crisscrosses, and sure enough, there you are. That's exactly what you're doing. So if we go back to this first image, again, you can see here that like melatonin is really high, right? Cortisol is really low at this point, but adenosine is really high as well. And so that all of that kind of adds together and compels you to sleep. And then as you clean up, right? So you're going to clean up all that adenosine and all the other metabolites that have been accumulated in your brain throughout the day. And then your cortisol is going to slowly start to rise along with other things that are kind of compelling you to wake up. And all of this is happening in about a day, right? I mean, again, this isn't a perfect 24-hour cycle, but it works pretty consistently. And this is why, again, if you're in that, darkened, windowless room, I don't know what situation you're in to be here. I don't know why you're here and you need to leave. But if you're in this horrifying scenario, you would have a rough idea. You'd be like, it feels like midday. It feels like we're in the middle of the night. And that is just going to be based around all of these things working together for your biological clock or your circadian rhythm. So again, this is part of a massive lesson all about sleep and wake cycles. This is a premium feature, but remember there are other free features for you to go ahead and check out. So like if we click on this article here, this is 100% free. It's all about the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Again, the videos, those are going to be a premium feature, as are our quizzes, but you get to see all of these amazing images for 100% free. We're going to go ahead and leave a link down in the description below to a separate but equally awesome premium feature, right? It's going to be on the reflex arcs. It's a study unit, but while we're down there, we'll also link to one of these free articles. Let's do the suprachiasmatic nucleus. I'm feeling adventurous today, so you're going to see 2 links down in the description. Go ahead and check those out. You're not going to regret it. But hopefully this made a lot of sense and you enjoyed today's video. If you did, do what YouTubers say, smash that like button, hit subscribe, comment, all that kind of stuff. But either way, I'm very appreciative of you hanging out with me, and I will see you in the next video.